Hey, I'm Randy Younger, New York City's go to film enthusiast. Every week, I dive deep into the world of cinema with special guests from the New York City film scene. Whether I'm interviewing industry insiders or comparing the latest releases, there's always something for every movie lover. Join me as I explore the magic of film and discover what makes these movies unforgettable. Hey guys, I'm Randy Younger, and this is a special edition of Under the Radar, bringing movies and people together one frame at a time. And I have a very special guest with me today. We have the director, producer, and key subject of the new documentary, Jimmy in Saigon, Mr. Peter McDowell. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Randy.
So the film is fantastic. It's moving. It's powerful. I'm just curious, what was the beginning of it all? What was the genesis of the project?
Well, thank you so much. And as you know, the film is about my eldest brother who died in Vietnam in 1972 when he was 24 and I was 5 years old. So I didn't really know him. There was 19 years between us. He was the oldest of six and I was the youngest. And he was mostly out of the house in college and then in army training and in Vietnam before he died. So I grew up, my family. Didn't know exactly how he passed away. He went back to Vietnam as a civilian and passed away. So there was a lot of mystery surrounding his life and death. And my family didn't really know, and I didn't really know. So I grew up with this uncertainty and also with this grief. And there were also some family secrets involved. So as I got older and I started to make some short films, I eventually decided that I was going to try to make a big move and create a feature documentary film about my brother's life. And I started surrounding myself by wonderful people, advisors, and I became a documentary filmmaker.
That's awesome. And it's such a beautiful tribute to this man. Even though you really didn't know him, it's like you still knew him in a way.
Yeah.
And this film is really just a lovely tribute to the man. Now, what was it like? I'm sure it churned some big emotions in you to go back and try to piece together this man's life. What was the feeling going into the project?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit less emotional going into the project because I didn't really know Jimmy, but my mom, of course, was extremely emotional. She was very close to her firstborn child, of very, very close to him too. So it was really hard for all of them. My mom, particularly, I think she and I became pretty close after he died, and I think she was kind of willing to open up to me about it. And that's for anyone who sees the film, there's aspects of my mom maybe talking about things that she had never talked about before that she had held inside. Same with my siblings. So I think for me, I had a little bit of a less emotional response at first, but then after a while, it did become very moving because I felt that it was sort of changing our family where we're becoming more close and more honest as we talked about these things. And I was very moved by the fact that my mom saved everything that belonged to Jimmy, especially about 200 letters that he had written to her and to some other people. So it is overwhelming and it's very gratifying for me to see everybody responding so well to it.
Yeah, and it's basically like a family reunion on film, and it's just fantastic, and it's so emotional, and like I can only just imagine how you feel whenever you see the film. Um, Now, obviously, documentaries are very heavy on editing. That's basically the driving force with most, if not all, documentaries. What was the editing process like? I know you worked with Kelly Creedon and Liz Marr. What was that
His
like?
car, yeah. Yeah, it was incredible. It was actually, people can't believe it when I tell them this, but I didn't sit in a room with either one of them when they were editing. It was both remote, and one of them I've never met. I've never met Kelly Creedon in person before, and the reason for that is really because of the pandemic. Because we raised money to start editing right in 2019 at the very end of the year, and then we started editing in March of 2020. So just as the pandemic was starting to hit. Kelly lives in North Carolina, and so we were going to do remote work, but we had a budget for her to travel out to LA to work with me and for me to travel out to North Carolina to work with her, but that had never ended up happening.
Hmm.
And then because of modern technology, it just worked out really well that she would send scenes, we would talk about them, we'd work on them, and then Liz, same thing. She was actually in LA,
Hmm.
and we didn't meet because it was the pandemic. She now lives in Chicago. I have met Liz in person, but it was just a wonderful process working with them because I was looking for a very specific kind of editor. I was looking for what one might call an auteur editor, so somebody who really knows how to tell a story. And both of them were just wonderful in helping shape and put the story together. And they both made suggestions to me about improving the film that involved shooting further scenes, more questions for my mom, more questions for me, things like that.
That brings me to my it's a good segue because I'm just curious on a film set, on a project like this or any project, how important is collaboration for you?
Collaboration is everything for me. It really is. I couldn't have made this film without the help of so many people, ranging from 750 donors that helped fund the film. I mean, I raised $300,000 from 750 donors. I had two wonderful producers, actually three wonderful producers, Peter Schulman, Lucia Palmerini, and one of my other brothers, John McDowell, who also wrote the soundtrack to the film.
Hmm.
I had wonderful assistants that I hired, and then I also had wonderful consultants that I hired. And yeah, for me, it success in filmmaking for me is all about surrounding myself with the best people, the best advisors, and the best helpers.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I totally agree. Collaboration is truly everything.
Yeah,
If you don't trust the people you're working with, then the project is doomed to fail.
yeah.
So I totally, yeah, agree with you. Um, and so I'm curious also, what were some challenges when you faced on set?
I mean, the film took 12 years to make,
Mm,
and that in and of itself was a challenge to sustain energy for 12 years and also to sustain faith in, from our donors and our funders. I have to say my donors and funders were incredible because they didn't come down hard on me for the fact that the film took so long. I mean, I thought it would take 2 or 3 years. I think they did as well.
mm,
But I had to just convince them to have faith, and they did. And now everyone is really pleased. I mean, I do think that um, it's hard to it's hard to know when you're done for a documentary film, and this is very common.
mm,
Now I know a lot of documentary filmmakers. I'm friends with a lot of them, and
mm,
we all have some similar problems. Like the average documentary takes about 7 years to make.
mm.
Some take 10, 12, 15, 20 years.
Wow.
Mine took 12, which seems to be, also kind of par for the course these days. And part of it is that, as a documentary filmmaker, you're really striving for the answers or striving for something that you want to share with your audience. And because it's not a scripted narrative film, it's hard to know when good enough is good enough and when it's time to stop. We had the really great good fortune of premiering the film at the British Film Institute's Flare Festival in London in March of 2022. So we showed, what was our final version of the film at that point in a lot of festivals. But I ended up seeing the film 50 times, and I had a list of like 35 small things that I wanted to change about the film. And
Wow.
we were really lucky that we were able to do that before this current final version, which is now out in movie theaters across the country and will be soon rentable on video on demand and pay-per-view.
Yeah, wow. So that's a lot of notes you're taking during each screening.
Yeah,
In your mind, you're constantly retooling and
yeah,
think I should have put this in there. And then
yeah,
I can only, I'm not a filmmaker, so I can only imagine how daunting a task that must have been to
yeah.
just revisit the film each time like that. That's awesome. How has the festival circuit been for you?
Amazing, just overwhelming festival experience has been starting from our first one in London, where we sold out two screenings and they added a third. People were lining up to talk about the film afterwards. To our next European festival in Torino, Italy, where we won the top award. We went to Greece, Amsterdam, Barcelona, won awards in all three of those cities. Across the US, had really great experiences in Chicago, New York, San Francisco. But I'd say audiences came up to me afterwards and said, this reminds me of my family, or my family also was dealing with family secrets, guilt, shame, mourning, grief. So I think the topics are really universal, and I was surprised that Europeans were so interested in the film, but they also felt like it connected with their culture.
That's beautiful. Um, and yeah, the response obviously has been fantastic. So kudos to you, sir, on that. Um, so I'm curious, in your opinion, what makes a good documentary? What is the essence of a documentary in your mind?
I mean, I think it's interesting because after people see my film, sometimes they're like, "Oh, you sort of told the story like bit by bit, slowly and gradually gave information to the audience." And I said, "Yeah, that's what we do in the documentary film world. I think that there's an instinct to tell things chronologically, like this happened and then this happened and then this happened. But it's a little more appealing to audiences if you kind of create a little bit of mystery and let information, come out bit by bit. My personal answer to that question, obviously you want a good story and you want compelling subjects, but you also want a really great soundtrack. And I was just so lucky and pleased that my brother John is a film composer. He's written film scores for many films, including an Academy Award-winning documentary called Born into Brothels. It won the Oscar in 2004. So John wrote the soundtrack to the film, and we really kept the soundtrack very present in the mix. We kept it like loud enough so people could really feel the music and get caught up in the soundtrack. I think a lot of times, documentary filmmakers don't necessarily know where to turn for music, so they
Mm.
might use some sort of like pre-recorded music that they got from some source, and there's no shame with that, but sometimes it doesn't move the story forward as much as if you have music that's purpose written for the film. So I think that those are like several ingredients that I think are really important to a good film.
And I'm actually a huge film score nerd. I was curious, slight side note, are you into film music yourself, instrumental?
I am. I love film music, and in fact, the soundtrack to Jimmy and Saigon is coming out any day now. It's going to be on all streaming platforms, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. But yes, I do love film scores. Were you going to ask me about some that I like, or
Yeah, I was just curious, like, what top three favorite film scores of all time?
Oh, I mean, I have some kind of obscure ones that I listen
Okay.
to. I love, there's a film called An Angel at My Table by
Hmm.
Jane Campion. I love the soundtrack to that. I
Okay.
love the soundtrack to Belly of an Architect by Peter Greenaway. I love the soundtrack to Call Me by Your Name,
Yeah.
the Guadagnino film.
Right,
And
right. Beautiful film. Beautiful.
yeah, I love Pedro Almodovar films, and I love the scores that Alberto Iglesias does for those. So yeah, it's music to me. I'm also a big opera fan.
Okay.
I'm an opera nerd, I guess I could say. And in my mind, opera and film are very connected because they're both these sort of overwhelming, large, emotional, expensive works of art with visual, story, music, everything sort of coming together.
That's awesome. And with such a keen ear, um, is there any possibility of you venturing into narrative features?
Well, thanks for mentioning that. I do have an interest in creating narrative works, and I kind of put it aside a long time ago, and maybe it will get reborn. When I was in that festival in Italy, in Torino, Italy, the programmer pulled me aside after screening. He's like, "I want to talk to you," and I was like, "Oh, did I do something wrong?" He's like, "No, I just wanted to say that." He said, "I wanted to see." He was so sweet. He's like, "I want to say that I think you could make, a narrative."
Yeah.
uh, Fiction film because I think you have the talent and like the ingredients are kind of visible in this film. And I thought it was a really nice thing to say. Like I think sometimes I've traveled to many film festivals and people, with all good intentions, people say kind of bland things to you like, ah, that was really great, but to have someone say like, hey, I believe in you and I believe you have even more to say to the world and here's why,
Right.
it's really touching for me.
Yeah, because Jimmy and Saigon, and it's a very visual tale. Very, there's such very strong images in the film. So I think the transition to narratives would be just a seamless transition for you.
Oh, thank you. That's very
Yeah,
touching to
yeah.
me. Yeah.
All right. Lastly, what do you hope audiences take away from the film?
Well, I created the film first and foremost as a work of intended to be a work of art cinematically. I want people to see it first and foremost as a great, engaging film. People sometimes ask me, did I make the film for family therapy purposes or to heal my family? And I say, like, hey, if that is a side effect, that's great, but I really wanted to create something that people could say, like, wow, that was really compelling or interesting work of art. And so and again, to repeat myself about the soundtrack that fits in with it, really well. Um, I think I also want people to take away from it that families can be more honest with each other, can communicate more honestly, not be afraid to talk about things, not to be afraid to talk about death. Families need to embrace all members of the family, especially LGBTQ members. I used to think that was, a given that we had come past that in this society. And now, with recent events politically, I think it's more important than ever to tell people, families saying, support your LGBTQ children, siblings, especially, it's not related to my film, but especially transgender people who are such lovely amazing people that aren't hurting anyone or so demonized in this current climate. So, I would love it if people took away that we have to be kind and supportive to each other, especially our family members.
Well put. Yeah. And again, the film is super, just it's super engrossing, and it's really a very interesting tale that you've put on camera here. And I'm curious, you don't have to answer, but are there any other films that you're working on now? Anything else that we can look forward to?
I often say that having this film is kind of like making this film is kind of like having a baby, and you want to kind of like wait till your baby grows up a little bit before you have another one.
Okay.
So I often tell people maybe in 3 to 5 years I'll work on another project.
Okay.
But I am very, as I mentioned, I love music, and there's a short film I'd like to make about a specific song,
Mm,
and there's a feature film that I'd like to make about a specific band.
okay.
So I really want to say exactly what those are right now, but those are two things that I have in mind. But you know, before that, I mean, we have distribution for Jimmy and Saigon in North America, but I would love to find distribution for this film in the UK and Asia and other parts of the world as well.
Great. And hopefully for your next project, hopefully it won't take another 12, 13 years.
No, it won't. It
Um,
absolutely won't.
so Peter, lastly, how can people see this wonderful film?
As of May 2025, the film is we just finished playing in New York City. We are going to be coming back a little bit at Cinema Village.
Mhm.
We're playing in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the CCA, and we're playing at a couple theaters in Los Angeles. So those are all opportunities to see it in person. And then the film will be online for rental, pay-per-view, video on demand through Amazon, iTunes, etc., starting May 13th.
That's awesome. Peter McDowell, thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
The film is Jimmy in Saigon. Please, if you get the chance, please do check it out. It is really wonderful. And Peter, I just want to thank you for your time today.
Thanks. And I forgot to mention our website is jimmyinsaigon.com and our Instagram is Jimmy in Saigon. So those are two great places to go to check out where the film's available.
Perfect, Peter. Thank you so much. And everyone watching and listening, I'm Randy Unger. This has been Unger the Radar, bringing movies and people together one frame at a time. We'll see you next time. Take care.